Shabbat Shalom. This week's Torah portion, if you've been paying attention, is called Bechukotai. Im Bechukotai Telechu ve'et mitzvotai tishmoru v'asitem otam begins, if you follow my laws and faithfully observe my commandments. And this word Bechukotai has a significance to it because we know that there are different words for different types or flavors of commandments. So later on in the portion we read, Ve'im b'chukotai timasu, if you despise my commandments, Ve'im mishpatai tigal nafshechem, and if your souls reject my ordinances. And so in fact, there is a dichotomy that is often expressed that bechukotai represents a particular type of commandment in opposition to mishpatai. So a mishpat is a law that is logical, that is rational, that any society, any functional society would have. Do not murder, that is a mishpat. Do not steal, that is a mishpat. Chukotai are the commandments that God said so. So arguably, the classic example is the ritual of the red heifer. We're going to read about it in a few weeks, but there are others, right? So the laws of kashrut perhaps are a chok. They exist not because rational humans would have came up with them on their own, but because God said so. And so you can understand the dichotomy of our observance in that way, the commandments that are rational, that are logical, and the ones that are culturally unique, that spring from something distinctive in Judaism. That's often the way the word bechukotai is understood. I'd like to suggest to you today that there is another meaning, another valence of that term that has some important implications for us and who we are in this moment in history and who we are as Jews. So Rav Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who is the founder of the Chabad movement, noted that there are two different ways that a Torah scroll can be written. Ktav, writing, is what we have on our scroll today. So the ink is placed by the quill and comes to rest on the parchment. It is not part of the parchment. It is actually a separate item. In fact, when a Torah scroll is damaged, frequently the letter literally will scrape, will fly right off. And so that's actually why it is hard to keep a Torah scroll, because the letters are separate from the substrate upon which they are written. And even the way we write with ink today, where the ink soaks into the paper, right? Anyone who has been the victim of check washing can tell you, right? Use the right detergent and the ink will come out. The ink is still separate from the paper. So that is ktiva. The word bechukotai, lechakek, means literally to inscribe or to etch or to carve. And the idea is, if you remember the tablets upon which the Ten Commandments were written, they were not written in ink, but rather they were etched into the very stone itself. And at the end of Deuteronomy, we'll read, when Moses comes to the land of Israel, the laws of the Torah are etched into pillars upon the land. And the difference is that chakikah, etching, inscribing, that the writing is actually part of the very material, that you cannot erase something that is mechukak. You can't erase something that has been etched and carved in stone without destroying the substrate. You cannot erase the tablets, you can only shatter them. So you have ktiva, where the message and the scroll are bound together but are separate entities, and you have chakikah, where the two, the substrate and the message, are merged into a single entity, a single item. They are indivisible from each other. So I want to encourage you to think this morning about the difference between things that are written in ink and things that are carved in stone. And so what Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi suggests is that these are two different levels of spiritual practice. Are the mitzvot simply that something that you do that are external to you? Or are they part of your very essence? Are they very much etched into the fiber, integral to who you are? So Rabbi Norman Lamb, who was an Orthodox sage of the last century, gave the metaphor, right? Is Judaism a vitamin that you take, a nutritional supplement, or is it the essence of your diet? Is it what you eat every day? Or another way of thinking about it is the difference between having a religion and being religious. So k'tiva is that which we take on when it is convenient. It is added to us. It is clothing that we wear. Chakikah is our bedrock. It is our flesh. It is our body. It is who we are. So we can think about what is written in ink and what is etched in stone in our religious life. So when we sit down to eat a meal and we choose whether we are going to bless that meal or what that meal is going to consist of, what is on or off the table for us, is that something that is part of our bedrock being, or is that simply something that we choose as we go? When we are faced with the choice of how we observe Shabbat, is that thing, are there things that are simply off the table, or is I'll see situationally how things unfold? When we are in business, when we are engaging in the world of commerce, and we are given a choice between doing the right thing and the wrong thing, is there only one option that is open to us? Or, well, let me do the math and see which column I fall into on this one. And so when we think about what it means to be a religious person versus to have a religion, we can think about, is our faith written in ink, or is it really etched in stone into our very being? So here is where Rabbi Bright actually dared me to do this. I want to talk about the outcome of this week's celebrity trial in New York. Everyone clench your orifices. This is going to be good. Steve is like, couldn't you have waited like a few more weeks into my presidency before you did this? I will not weigh in on the outcome because I'm actually fairly confident that everyone in this room has already decided how they feel even before the outcome was decided. Because, by the way, there was a lot of noise and fuss, excitement, outrage, delight, but I actually have trouble believing that it changed a single mind. And in fact, if anything, for most people, it only reinforced what they already believed. Because for most Americans, there are beliefs that are carved into their hearts that have nothing to do with what is written in that scroll in the Ark or even in the Bible that they have in the pews of their houses of worship, or what is written in the books that they have. As Americans, we have beliefs etched in our hearts that have nothing to do with religious faith. Because, by the way, if you ask around, a good chunk of the country is convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that justice was finally served, and there is outrage that a convicted felon might become president. Another significant chunk of the country is convinced beyond the shadow of a doubt that this is the greatest miscarriage of justice and that a righteous man has been falsely prosecuted. A smaller chunk think he's guilty and don't care, and a fair number of people are really concerned that this might be it for J-Lo and Ben Affleck. More than you might think. And so as we think about this moment in history, I think we realize that there are things that are engraved in people's hearts, not even written in pen, but etched into the soul of their being, that are immutable, that maybe should not be. That maybe what we have engraved in our hearts may not always be what is most helpful. Because that second mention of bechukotai, in our portion, im bechukotai timasu, if you reject what is bechukotai, what is engraved, what is etched, the mishpatim will also go, society will fail. We live at a moment when things that everyone agreed on, that what were the norms of justice, how do we come together and share trust in a system, is on the verge of shattering like those tablets that Moses dropped. And so I look for answers. So this week, I was at a conference sponsored by the Multi-Faith Neighbor Network, and they very specifically do not call themselves interfaith because interfaith implies we're all the same, we're going to braid our hair, we're going to sing Kumbaya, and that is not what they are trying to do. Their claim is that we actually do not have to agree with each other at all, that I can actually have lunch with people who think I am going to hell, but we can still have a cordial relationship because that's what it takes at this moment in time. Or conversely, that someone else can have lunch with someone that they think is going to hell, right? And so I gathered at a retreat center. It was a long and arduous journey. There's a beautiful retreat center 3 miles from here along the Chattahoochee. And so it was Protestants, Muslims, and Jews at a Catholic retreat center overlooking the river. And one of the things that was shared with us, which I had never heard outright, but I think is true, that it takes about 20 years to create a civil society, to create a group of people who agree on norms, who figure out how they're going to live together, and it takes only 2 or 3 years to destroy one. Because if you make a mistake in pencil, it's easy to erase. If you make a mistake in ink, you can still white it out. If you break the tablets, you have to go up to Mount Sinai to get new ones. And so we spent almost two days together, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and we actually resolved almost nothing. We actually had a lengthy session where we were able to successfully figure it out when we would schedule our next meeting. But in some ways, that's actually not the point. Right? At some point, it may mean that we are able to, as a synagogue, figure out how to do good in the world with people who think that we are fundamentally wrong on the most important issues of life, whether it be people who think we're going to hell, or even, dare I say, people who think that some of our most deeply held beliefs about Israel are horribly wrong. And the thing is, I might get to choose my friends, but I don't get to choose my neighbors. And if I can't figure out how to live with them, at least in peace, then we all have a problem. And so we live at a moment in time when things that are engraved in our hearts may be leading us in the wrong direction. Maybe sometimes we are holding up the wrong things on our tablets. And so I ask the question at this moment when our society is divided, where the results of a trial actually mean nothing because everyone's already decided what they think. What does it mean to have a relationship with someone even if they have different words inscribed on their tablets? Not that we are trying even to write a common script, but not to end up with both of our tablets shattered. And perhaps for us, for people in this room today who are part of the Jewish community, so we think about those things that are etched in stone on our hearts. Some of those may have to do with the trial this week. But my message for you is to make sure that the things that you hold most strongly in your hearts, the things that are etched in stone, are the things that are worth having etched in stone. Do you care as much about what it means to care for others as you do about the results of the trial this week? Do you care as much about what it means to live a life of faith, to care about how you observe the seventh day, about how you care for what you do when you sit at a meal, as you do what happened this week? Could you sit at a meal with someone whose tablets say something different than yours about what happened this week? Perhaps even in about 40 minutes at Kiddush. We live in a world where some of the things that should be written in pen are etched in stone, and some of the things that should be etched in stone are written in pencil. So my prayer for us this week is that we learn the lesson of Bechukotai, that there are tremendous blessings available to us, blessings of plenty, blessings of peace. But there are also tremendous curses, curses of famine and hardship and war. And which ones we get are determined very much by what is written in pen and but what we choose to have etched in stone in the tablets of our hearts. Shabbat Shalom.